Hey guys, how's it going? It's been a couple weeks since I made a video, so figured I'd make another one and keep you guys up to speed on the IS300. If you watched my last video, I mentioned that I was having some fitment issues with the Injector Dynamics ID1700s that I purchased. So what was happening was kind of hard to see here, but on the top side of the injector is just a regular O-ring that actually slides into the fuel rail. On the bottom side is what they call a denso cushion. So this cushion is designed to kind of seal by having some preload or force as opposed to sliding inside of a sealed bore. So what's happening is before that cushion even comes into contact inside the injector bore is the body of the injector where the connector goes into the injector is hitting the intake manifold. So it hits, which will prevent it from sealing properly, okay? So what I ended up doing, where did I put that spacer? What I ended up doing was sending the entire intake manifold assembly, including the fuel rail and the injectors and everything, I sent them all to Injector Dynamics. Rather than going back and forth via email, it's not very efficient that way. So sent everything to them, and they came up with a solution which consists of an additional, what you would, I guess, call just a spacer on the bottom of the regular denso cushion. So looks like that's about maybe 1/8 of an inch, maybe 150 thousandths of additional spacing to push the injector out of the bore a little bit more to prevent this from hitting. So I've actually test fitted it and seems like it's going to work. My only concern is that with a double cushion setup like this, that it might not seal as effectively as a single cushion setup would. So my goal today is to assemble the fuel rail and injector, all that stuff, and pressure test the entire intake manifold assembly. Because the last thing I want to deal with is boost leaks, going through the injector and it's around these cushions, because nobody likes to deal with boost leaks. It's just a nightmare. So I'm going to pressure test it beforehand before I get everything installed, just to make sure I feel confident that this is going to actually work properly. So it should also be noted that since they're spacing the injector out more, something had to be done about the fuel rail, right? The fuel rail distance had to change. So they sent these little, looks like about 1/4 inch or 200 thousandths worth of spacer that I have to put underneath the fuel rail mounting tabs that will essentially push the fuel rail out and make up for the difference here. So that should keep everything aligned properly and still allow everything to fit like it should. So the way I'm going to pressure test this thing, I've done this a few times already, so I've actually just have this pretty basic, it's a 1/4 inch thick sheet of aluminum that I just cut and drilled out the bolt pattern of the intake manifold itself on the cylinder head side, because obviously I don't have a way to bolt it to the cylinder head and have it seal properly. So this way I can bolt it up here. I don't have to worry about valves, which valves are open, hearing it through the cylinder head, that kind of thing. So this effectively allows me to completely block that off, obviously in combination with the factory gasket. So that'll seal the cylinder head side, and I'll end up popping the throttle body back on. And for the throttle body side, I've just got a reducing coupler, and this is just a 3-inch, basically just a cap or a plug that I made just out of some extra aluminum piping and a flat piece of aluminum I welded on. So drilled it and tapped it for an NPT fitting. This will allow me to hook a, air line to this from the compressor and pressure test the entire intake manifold assembly. Luckily, my compressor has a built-in regulator, so I can turn it down to 30 psi or 50 psi rather than smacking it with 100 psi, because that would probably end badly. So yeah, that's the goal today. Just pressure test this thing and make sure that the injector spacing solution is going to effectively seal and not have any boost leaks or other issues like that. So I'm first going to put the cylinder head plate on, and then we'll do the throttle body and everything else. There's a couple more ports, so there's an 8AN and a 6AN port I've got to plug here. All of the rest of the stuff that I was using, there's NPT ports all up and down this thing just for my map sensor, intake air temp, that kind of stuff. And I've already thrown plugs in those, so I don't have to worry about those right now. But we'll get it plugged up and then we'll hook it up and see if we got any leaks. So let's get to it. Got the cylinder head side blocked, and now we'll put the throttle body on. Just 4 bolts, pretty straightforward. Good enough. Okay, next we need to put the reducing coupler, this plug, and the clamps. This is easier to put in first, like that. Then we'll pop this on. It's a little tight. Okay, good to go. Now we need to install the fuel rail with the injectors. So we'll set this down here, make it a little easier. I have all of the injectors already installed in the fuel rail itself. This is the easiest way to do it, I've found. And then just carefully line each of the injectors up and pop it in like that. Not too bad, but that might be a little more difficult when I'm actually doing it in the car. All right, we'll tighten these down a little bit. Make sure it's still got movement, nothing's binding up. Okay. Feels good. So that should be it. Got these AN caps installed and tightened as well. I don't know if the camera cut out before that, but those are pretty easy. Yeah, everything looks good. So on the top of these injectors, there's a spring that helps keep preload on the injectors to keep the lower cushion seated. So those are compressed nicely. I think that's what they're designed to do. So looks like everything's fitting pretty well, but the true test will be when we put some pressure to it. So I'm going to move it over to my other workbench where it's closer to the compressor, and we'll hook it up and see if we can blow it up. All right, we're back. I got the intake manifold here on my other bench. Got the compressor hooked up. I've already fired it up. It's got pressure ready to go. So I just got, I think this is just a 3/16 hose. Fits nicely on that barb that's on the throttle body cap. And I've just got this regular air nozzle, and the hose actually fits nicely on it. Don't even need a clamp or anything because it fits nice and tight. So I've got the regulator set right now. Looks like 40 psi. So that should be more than I'll ever run through this thing, but I just want to make absolutely sure that there's not going to be any problems, right? So let's pull the trigger here and see what happens. Make sure pressure stays under control. Okay, I can hear the regulator. The regulator's letting a little bit of air through. That's 25 psi, and I hear a leak. Wow. Yeah, this number 6 injector is not sealing properly already at 25 psi. You can hear it change just with a little bit of extra force. That's too bad. So what I might end up having to do, so I thought it was weird that, as far as the cushion, they only spaced the injector out like 1/8 of an inch, but then they added a spacer for the fuel rail that was almost double that. So I might need to find some spacers for the fuel rail that are a little less tall and try again. Yeah, all the other ones seem to seal up okay. This is number 6. I'll pull the fuel rail off again real quick and maybe readjust some stuff. Make sure everything's the way it should be, clean, and we'll try it again. Just pulled the fuel rail off. I don't see anything that would cause an issue. Looks just the same as the rest of the injectors. I think what I'll do is we'll swap number 6 injector for number 5 and see if it follows, if the leak persists, if it follows the injector or if it stays with the cylinder number. So we'll try that. Okay. That's back on. The regulator still good to go. Looks like it's like 35 psi. Although it takes a minute to ramp up once you start pulling the trigger here. So let's see if it's the injector or if it's that cylinder. It's about 15 psi, 20, coming up on 25. It's about 25. Oh. What in the world? Now we got a leak here. Well, never mind that leak there. I don't know what happened there, but the leak on the injector stayed with number 6. Cylinder 6, that is. So, I think what I will end up doing is just trying to find some shorter spacers See if a little extra force pressing down will keep that number 6 sealed properly, because there's nothing inside the manifold or on the injector that would be causing an issue like that. So anyway, that's going to do it. I'm already sick of messing with this thing for the day, so time to call it a night. So I thought I had had enough of this thing for the day, but apparently I haven't. I ended up taking a little break, coming back out and digging through some of my bins. Got a bunch of bins in my garage just full of random parts and stuff I've accumulated over the years. And I actually found some plastic spacers that are just like 50 thousandths shorter than the ones that Injector Dynamics sent. So I'm going to try and put these guys on and see if just that small extra amount of preload will help that number 6 injector to stop leaking. So I'll throw these guys in and fire up the compressor again and get back. Here's just a quick shot of the difference, if you can even tell. Pretty minimal difference, but I think it will help. We'll see. Alright, I got the fuel rail reinstalled with those shorter plastic spacers. As you can see, it's sandwiched there in between the mounting tab and the intake manifold. Everything still looks really good. Didn't make a whole lot of difference. The bolts still went in smooth, you know, not like it was tough to get in or anything. The injectors still turn like they should, so they're not bound up or anything like that. I've already fired up the compressor, so it's ready to go. I guess we'll watch this lower gauge, which is the outlet pressure. It's going to drop once I pull the trigger, so I'll pull the trigger now. It's filling the intake manifold. That's about 15. That's 20 psi. 25. That's where I was hearing the leaks before, was around 25. That's 30 psi. We'll take it up to 35. Alright, that's 35 psi. And to my pleasant surprise, that number 6 injector is solid. I don't hear a dang thing. Awesome. You can probably hear a little bit coming out of throttle body. That's pretty normal for aftermarket throttle bodies. They're typically not a perfect seal, but yeah, awesome. We fixed it just with a simple spacer change. Just increase the preload a little bit, and that's all it needed. So I guess we'll sign off there. If you have any questions or anything, as always, feel free to hit me up, and I'll try to do another update video here within the next few weeks.